Hi, my name is Al Williams. In this video, we're going to have a look at the new data model that was introduced in Tableau 2020.2. Prior to version 2020.2, the data model employed by Tableau looks like the diagram on the left, where you can have one or more physical tables that are joined together. These could be inner joins, left joins, or full outer joins. With the new data model in version 2020.2 and above, you can have a much more complex data model if you need to. So as you can see on the diagram on the right hand side, we've duplicated what we had for the data model from the previous version, plus we've added a separate logical table called physical table B, and we have a relationship between those two logical tables. So you almost have a semantic layer now with Tableau with this new data model, which is kind of a nice thing to have. These images, by the way, I lifted directly from the Tableau website that talks about the new data model, and the link is on the bottom of the page. I'd like to talk briefly about the underlying data for this demo. Microsoft has a sample database called Contoso Retail DW, and it's on the left-hand side here in SQL Server. I've got it open. So this is a large data set. It's great. It's a great sample database for practicing creating dashboards and reports and things like that. The thing I like about this database, it has a lot of records. So it has more than a lot of the other sample databases out there, and definitely a lot more than the default Superstore Excel file that comes with Tableau. Just to give you an idea, the fact table for the online sales table has over 12 million rows in this database. So it's a very large database, and the data sets that we're using come out of this database. I've exported them to text files, which I'm going to make available from my website if you like to download them and follow along as I go through the demo. Let's dive deeper into the data we're going to use for this demo. So the very first data set with the highest level of granularity, so the lowest number of records, the most aggregation. We have 3 dimensions: category, sale date, and country. In the second highest granularity level, we have those 3, plus we added state and city, so 2 more dimensions. The third, we have all of those 5 dimensions plus subcategory. And for the final one, the lowest granularity level, so this one has the most detail, we have all of those dimensions plus product. Now the interesting thing about the data we're using here is we're not using a data set with very few number of rows to illustrate this. We're actually going to use some pretty big data sets. So the highest level of granularity here, we have 9,700. Second highest level, 73,000 and change. And the third highest level, over 275,000 rows. And the lowest level of granularity, 2.3 million. So this will be a really good test for the new Tableau data model. Okay, we're ready to start the tutorial. I have Tableau open. Let's see what version I've got here. I'm on 2020.3.2, so this is the most recent version of Tableau. The features I'm showing are in 2020.2 and above. We're ready to start bringing in data. Before I do, I just want to mention one thing. When I create these videos, quite often it's as a result of a blog that I've read or another video that I've viewed and just want to take a slightly different approach to making my own video. In this case, I got a good understanding of how these data models work by looking at a couple of videos from Tableau Tim and Robin Vernouge. I probably said Robin's last name wrong, but I will have the links to their videos on my website, so you can check their videos out as well. So thanks to those 2 gentlemen. Let's connect to some data and get this started. I'm going to connect to a text file. The first file I want to connect to is the one with the least number of records, so the highest level of aggregation, which is this file right here. I'm going to bring that in. It's going to open up the data source pane. And what I'm going to be showing you first is the new way with the new data model, which by default is what is displayed when you connect to a data set in Tableau. Okay, because I opened up a text file from a directory, Tableau recognized there were other text files in there, so I'm just going to start bringing in the next record set. So you'll see one thing that's different is rather than a direct line, which the old data model had, kind of a different interface, you have these, I think people call them noodles. So when you're joining tables, you'll see the noodle, and anyways, I'm going to connect these 2 tables, and then I'm going to define the joins for them. So once I bring the record set in, it's processing the request. Because these are text files, sometimes it takes a few seconds. So now we see an interface here where it lets me edit the relationship. So I have to define the joins. This edit relationship box came up by itself. So let's start We're going to join the category name from both together. So I click on both of them like that. It adds it up there. This is one thing I'm not quite sure of. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. I can't add another relationship until I close the bottom window and click on Add More Fields. If I'm doing this wrong, someone please let me know. So I'll do the same thing for country. And I'll do the same thing for the other dimension here, which is sale date. Other than that, we just have measures in these two data sets. This is how we're going to define the joins between them. We'll bring in the next level of aggregation now, which is a subcategory level. And we'll do the exact same thing. I'm going to do the first part here a little bit slower so you can kind of understand where you have to click and when you have to wait when you're adding these relationships. So the way you do it, I'm clicking on category on the left-hand side, category on the right. There's no OK button. Once I click those two, it's going to establish that join. As you can see, it's done that. Then I click on close and I go add more. I'm going to pause this while I add the rest of the dimensions that are common between these two data sets. So I've established the joins between the category and subcategory levels, basically just taking all of the dimensions that are common in the two data sets and joining them. And I'm going to add the final level now, which is the product level. I'm just going to drag it here, define the relationships, and show you what they look like when I'm done. Okay, I've created the joins between subcategory level and the product level. So every dimension that's common between the two is in here. Now this does take a little bit of time depending on the complexity of your data sets, how many data sets you're joining, how many common dimensions and so forth. So that's why I took a bit of time going through this and trying to explain it. So that's done. I just want to rename this, give it a better name. We'll call this new data model, and then we'll start going to a worksheet and see how this looks. One thing you'll notice with the new data model is for each of the tables in the data model, the measures appear right underneath the dimensions under each table. When we use the traditional method of joining tables in Tableau, we'll have all dimensions on top and all the measures on the bottom. So it looks a little bit different, and we are going to see that shortly. So first I want to see how many records we have at each one of these levels. Remember I showed the in the introduction I showed how many records I expected to have. Let's have a look at that right now. So to get the record counts, I just pick on the object that was created here. So this is the count of all the records at the category level country record set. I just bring this in to the dashboard. Let's make the font a little bit bigger so we can actually see this. Now let's make it 28 points. So that's the record set with the least number of records, the most aggregation. The next level was the category level. Let's bring that one into text as well. 73,000. Next level, subcategory level, 275,000, and the product level, 2.39 million. So these are the record counts that we saw on the slide I had near the presentation, the start of the presentation. Whenever I'm working with a new data model, if it's anything more than one table, even if it's a simple inner join, I like to do some data validation of the raw data before I start building the visualizations, because if the data isn't quite right or if one of the joins isn't defined correctly, the visualizations will be kind of useless. And the way I do that, I typically I like to use my old friend Excel. I'll bring in some of the data sets into Excel and build some cross tables. So for example, I've got this subcategory level. So if you recall, this is the data set that had 275,000 rows, and we do have that in here. And I just had a cross tab here, pivot table, to see how many records in each one of the months. So this is 7,403 for January of 2007. So I just want to do a little test in Tableau. Let me build out a little worksheet and make sure this number is valid. So let's build a little table here in Tableau just to validate some of those numbers. I'm just going to bring in all the counts first into it. And one more. I do want to bring in the sale date up onto rows. And I want it to be month. I want it to be table. Switch it around here. Okay, so I think I've got what I want here actually now. Let's just make it a little bit wider. I guess I didn't need to do that, just make it standard again. Okay, so what I'm seeing for January of 2007, 7,403 rows from the subcategory table, and 7,403. So I might do a bit more validation than this. In fact, I built some other pivot tables in here to validate some of the sales numbers, but I do like to double check to make sure the joins are performed correctly. So I know I've got it correct in Tableau because I'm getting the same number of rows as I'm getting in Excel with the pivot table. I'm going to start building a chart so we can see some of the numbers that we have in those different data sets. So I should point out, and this is kind of important, that the total sales amount in each one of those 4 files is the same. They just have different levels of aggregation. So if I want to see the total sales for any month or quarter or year from any one of the tables in this new data model, it should give me the exact same dollar volume. So let's see if that's the case. So let's bring the sales from each one of the tables that we had here. And remember, the measures for each one of the tables is underneath the dimensions for that table. I'll bring the sales amount for the category level, subcategory level. Let's make this line charts. No, I can't make a line chart yet because I did not bring in the date. So let's bring in the last measure, product level, sales amount. And now I want to bring in the date. Let's go up to the top here. I'm taking it from the highest level of aggregation. So I'm going to make this quarter. And now let's change it to a line chart. Let's see what we've got. I want to make this continuous. So there we go. I'm going to put some labels on, show mark labels, and I'm just going to put the line ends. And I'm going to bring something into color so it looks a bit nicer. I'll bring measure names into color. So I do see the exact same number, 868,538,158 for the sales for each one of these tables. And that's exactly what I want to see. With Tableau's new data model, it made that possible. When I previously said that this number was exactly what I wanted it to be, the reason I know that, in my Excel file, I've got a pivot table showing me the total dollar volume of sales for Q1 for 2007, and it is 868 million, which agrees to what we have in Tableau here. So now we're going to do it the old way. So now we're going to add a second data source. This will be the old way of doing things. So I'm going to click on the data source tab. It's going to take me there in a minute. So I'm over here now. Actually, I don't want to do it from there. I want to do it right from one of these worksheets. I'm going to go data, new data source. I just like doing it from there. And I'm going to connect to a text file to begin with. And I'm going to pick the same first file that we had when we created the new data model. And from there, it's going to bring me to the data source pane where I can start adding other tables and making joins the way it was done with the previous version of the data model. So now it's brought in the table. Now if I just start dragging in these other tables, I'm still getting the noodle. So this is doing it the new way. If I want to do it the old way, I have to click on the down arrow beside the name and click on open. So now this is the interface that Tableau had before version 2020.2. So now I'll bring in the other tables and define the joins. I'll just bring in the first table, define the joins, and pause it until I've added the others, because that will take a little while, just to give you the idea of how this works. So I'm going to bring in now the category level, and just so the interface here is different. I don't want a union. I just want to drag it in here and then define the joins. So once I drop it there, Tableau's automatically created a join between these two, but it probably doesn't have what I want. I definitely don't want to join on sales quantity. So let's go ahead and make the proper joins. I want category name. And category name, oops, I made a mistake there. Let's pick category name. Add a new one. Country, and we just have one more for this join, which would be the sale date. So this was similar to how we did it with the new data model, but this does look a little bit different. If you're used to earlier versions of Tableau, this is what it looks like. So the goal here is to define all of the joins that we had in the new data model with all the dimensions that are shared between the two tables. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, show you what it looks like when it's done, and then we'll continue on. So I've created all of the joins between the different tables and defined the fields that are to be joined together, and I've renamed this data source old data model. So now we can have a look at how Tableau handles things the way it used to. If we're trying to get the same results as we did here, which as you saw was just a few clicks to get these line charts to be the same amounts, we want to do the same thing with the old data model. Okay, I'm going to create a new worksheet, and I'm going to switch to the old data model, which is the one that we just created. Notice on the left hand side where we have the tables, dimensions, and measures grouped together, it looks different than the new data model. Let's switch back to that quickly. With the new data model, for each table we see the dimensions followed by the measures. With the old data model, we see for each table all of the dimensions, and then underneath that the measures for each table. I'm not sure why it's different, it just is. So that would be your first indication that you're working with the old data model when you see it set up this way. So with the old data model, I just brought in a count of this field right here, automatically created field by Tableau, category level, country. Now, with the new data model, we saw this for each one of the tables. We don't see that with the old data model. We just have one. So the 2.369 million is equal to the file that had the most amount of detail, so the lowest level of aggregation. So we kind of expected that, but let's see what happens when we try and break it out the way we did here for the counts by month. It's probably not going to work the way we expect it to. To save a bit of time, I created this worksheet already, so it's got the old data model counts by month. So what we're seeing is we're seeing duplication. These are not the right numbers, and it's just the way the old data model performs the joins and how it works with the data. What we want to see and report on are these values here, so the actual numbers for the different levels of aggregation that we have. There is a way to do that, and the next thing we're going to do is create a few formulas that will solve this problem. A bit earlier, we created this new data model chart that gave us the same values for each one of the tables that we have in the data model, which is what we were wanting to get. If I build the same report using the old data model, and these numbers are insane. Must be regressive duplication going on here, because I'm seeing in the top chart, I think that might be 1,530,000,000,000. It's an enormous number, and it's wrong. And the reason is because the old data model doesn't know how to handle these types of calculations without using level of detail expressions. So let's build a few formulas that will fix this issue. So how do we fix this issue? We have to create some formulas that use the level of detail expression. This tells Tableau how to aggregate the results. So I'm going to have a look at the one I created while I pause the video. So this one is sales from second most granular table. I'm using a fixed level of detail expression. So what it's saying is calculate this only based on these specific dimensions from these tables that we have in our data source. And I want you to use the average of the sales amount. Okay, so we have formulas for each level of granularity. The only difference is that the number of dimensions will be different in each one of these formulas because we're aggregating at different levels of granularity. All right, now let me switch to the chart that's got this fixed already. Actually, let me do it in real time. So I want to bring sales from second most granular. I want to replace what we have on that second pill. I'm going to drop that there. And we can see this number has changed to 269,835. I'm going to bring from third most granular and put it into this one, and that number should change in a minute as well. All right, we only have one more left, and now we'll just bring sales from most granular data, pop it right here, and now all the numbers are the same. So with the old data model, we had the ability to get the same results as we did with the new data model, but we weren't able to do it without creating formulas that are somewhat not the easiest thing to understand. The level of detail expressions took me a while to wrap my head around. One of the videos I created 3 or 4 years ago talks about level of detail expressions, but you can do both with the new data model or the old data model. It's just a bit more difficult with the old one. So that's about all I wanted to demonstrate in this video, just to give you a bit of an overview of how the new data model works, and with different levels of aggregation, what the impacts are for using the new versus the old. So thank you for watching, and if you want to download the files I used for this video, they're available from my website, alanwilliams.ca. Thanks again.